Running is one of the most popular forms of exercise in the entire world. Every day, millions of people are running incredible distances to improve their health and to improve their fitness. But is running actually the best way to burn fat and get those lean gains? We're gonna answer that very question and go over what you can do to lose fat efficiently, and we're gonna start right now. Running comes in all forms of variations. You could be on a breakaway touchdown, running at a sprinter's pace, maybe even stealing second base like Ricky Henderson. You can even look at running at breakneck pace over 400 meters or trying to conquer a hill. Or you can run much greater distances at 1,000 meters, 5,000 meters, 10,000 meters, maybe even running a marathon. And we like to look at durational strength characteristics, okay? So we like to break things down into strength characteristics. And when we identify this, we can look at sprinting as basically looking at blast impulse and sustained impulse to a point. And then when we're looking at that mid-distance level, 400 meters or 800 meters, that's gonna be more of sustained endurance. And then if we're over that 2-minute time frame, that's gonna lump into that classical endurance, especially if we're looking at a 10K or running a marathon. That's going to be focusing on developing classical endurance. With fat loss, you need to look at two specific factors: total daily energy expenditure and caloric deficit. So if we're cooking dinner, that's gonna contribute to our total daily energy expenditure. If we're laying on the couch playing video games, that's also going to contribute to total daily energy expenditure. Talking about losing fat, if we have less calories being consumed than our total daily energy expenditure, that's gonna help us lose some weight or lose some fat. So if we look at the aspect of someone who tends to be more active, if they do tend to run a bit more, if they do tend to lift or participate in resistance-based training a bit more, therefore it's typically gonna be easier for them to be in a caloric deficit. Thus, it's gonna be easier for them to lose that fat mass. So how does running factor into you losing fat? Does it just help you lose weight? Does it help you pack on muscle? Or does it make you turn into that dreaded boogeyman of all fitness enthusiasts? The dreaded, skinny, fat man. Running does carry a few pitfalls around losing fat. First off, if we're looking at classical endurance, if we're thinking about running for 30 minutes up to 2 hours, let's say we're trying to get a 10K in, that's gonna be 6.2 miles, even 8 miles, 10 miles. That's gonna get us even further closer to that 2-hour time frame. So that's gonna take a lot of time. The second factor is that we're gonna burn a lot of calories, so we are gonna be hungry. So if we're looking at running a mile, it's gonna take about 120 to 140 calories burned. If we do that for 10 miles or for 5 miles even, we are going to be very, very hungry afterwards. So we need to focus on calorically dense foods that are loaded with vitamins, minerals, protein, fat, carbohydrates, so that we can aid in our recovery. If I have avocados with homemade French toast from sprouted grain bread with our own eggs, and then even a protein shake to help with that recovery. Trust me, I used to hate running. I even have videos talking about how it's actually negative. But now I've gotten a little bit more mature. I used to be a shot putter. Now I've actually accomplished running a full marathon. And that's where I learned that third final pitfall. Running is a contact sport. And this is actually a quote from John Giacalone, the owner of Mobility Doc. He even said this. He's like, listen, you just gotta be careful. You need to make sure you're doing the right strength training. You need to make sure that you're fueling yourself. You need to make sure that you're recovering well, because it is a contact sport. And if you do get laid up because of an ankle issue or a knee issue or a hip issue from that contact, we just need to make sure that we're aware that our total daily energy expenditure is going to drop substantially when we could potentially get injured. Running is physical activity, and to avoid that dreaded skinny fat body, there's a couple simple tricks that we can use. Now, one of the tricks that I use for running when I was building up to execute that Philadelphia Marathon is that I added in resistance-based training 3 days a week. And what I chose to use was the athletic fitness program inside of our strength training app, Peak Strength. When I'm using Peak Strength, I like to resistance train at least 3 days a week in conjunction with what I'm doing as far as out on the road or out on the track. And what that provides is that structural strength so that I can maintain my pace or even get stronger. Head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store, and you can download Peak Strength and then select Athletic Fitness, and that's gonna help increase your total daily energy expenditure. Now, there are a lot of positives around running, and it's not just long wear and tear on the lower limbs. Outside of buying a good pair of shoes, running has a really low barrier to entry. It's easy to get into that sport of running. If we look at the lyrics from Dan Deacon on Wham City, where he sings, "Everyone can play the drums and sing," it's very similar in the world of running. Everyone can get out and put one foot in front of the other as long as they have that caveat of being able-bodied. Another big factor is that it has a crazy bump in that TDEE. So if we're looking at increasing our total daily energy expenditure, which in theory will make it easier to achieve that caloric deficit, running can do that very, very simply. And then finally, trust me on this one, where I was that old school lift heavy all the time, push everything as much as I can, squat a lot, bench 500, deadlift 705 pounds. For me, some of the biggest gains around running from a positive aspect was that mental flip, that mental change. Going into longer runs and thinking at one point, 1 mile was really long, then 2 miles was longer, then 3 miles was longer. But that constant progression to getting up to the point of being able to run that marathon, that was a huge mental victory. And I think that's something that I didn't account for early on that you guys can really find as a big time beneficial aspect, is that mental challenge and that mental anguish sometimes when you're out suffering can really lead to a lot of mental growth and hopefully stability. But does running help you lose fat or just get you skinny fat?
The answer to the question is yes and yes. But the solution for the second yes is there for the fiction. And typically what you should be doing is doing resistance-based training, so strength training 3 to 4 days a week. And then if you're running 2 to 3 days a week, that's gonna help improve those durational strength characteristics, specifically that classical endurance. The running's also gonna help that lean muscle mass that you've gained from that resistance-based training to shine through. So if we break this down, we're gonna start with lifting 3 to 4 days a week. Then the second key factor, try to add in 2 to 3 running days. That means we're gonna increase that lean muscle mass while also improving our aerobic capacity. And then finally, most importantly, make sure that you have an idea of how many calories you're burning on a daily basis and make sure that you're replenishing that so you can keep up with your recovery. Now, if that recovery is on point and we actually have a clue as to what we're burning on a daily basis and we want to lose fat, just start with that caloric deficit around 200 to 400 calories. So you decrease by 200 to 400 calories, and then you're gonna start to shed that fat mass. Because remember, freaks, if you wanna become a champion, you've always gotta cultivate your power. Peace.